Chapter 4. Growing Up. I attended Jordan Junior High through the 8th grade. These were formative years for me, and I was fortunate to have excellent teachers. In those days, all my teachers were unmarried and truly committed to their craft, teaching. They taught the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic skills. There was no question about deportment. They were the boss, and our parents supported the teachers 100%. If I misbehaved in school, which I did on occasion, my parents always supported the teacher's position and admonished me. There was discipline in the classroom, respect for the teachers, and teachers were not impaired in their duties by having to spend precious time disciplining students. Unlike the situation in many schools today, we were able to learn and not be distracted by severe and disruptive classroom behavior. Rabbi Barrett did a lot of ecumenical work with both the Catholic and Protestant communities, and this paved the way for improved relations among the different religious groups. Rabbi Barrett was a significant influence in the lives of all the Jewish families who resided in Lewiston and Auburn. He led the Hebrew school. He formed a marvelous choir at our temple, Beth Jacob, on the corner of Sabattis and Shawmut. He was a towering intellectual who also understood children and their needs. I recall that we, the Jewish kids, used to arrive early for Hebrew school so we could play step baseball on the stairs of the temple. This was played using a tennis ball and throwing it hard against the cement stairs. The ball rocketed off the stairs, and whether you were out or got a single, double, triple, or home run was contingent upon how far the ball traveled. If it was a fly ball and was caught, you were out. If it didn't make it across the sidewalk to the street, you were out. Sometimes, if you threw the ball hard against the stairs and it hit just right on the corner of the stairs riser and step, it would fly all the way across the street and over the heads of the fielders for a home run. The rabbi used to admonish us for being so sacrilegious as to play ball on the temple stairs, but he always let us play until almost before it was time to go in for our Hebrew classes, before coming outside and scolding us for banging a ball against the temple stairs. We all felt that Rabbi Barrett, who once was an amateur boxer and wrestler, would have liked to join in the game, but his position forbade him from doing so. When it came time for my bar mitzvah, it was Rabbi Barrett who prepared me. He was very astute, and after hearing me try and sing, I couldn't carry a note, and still can't, shorten my Haftorah section. I'm sure he did this to spare the congregation the agony of listening to a 13-year-old's singing voice, which broke frequently from alto to a squeaky soprano, like most teenage voices caught between childhood and adulthood. But the pièce de résistance of my bar mitzvah was my speech. My dad authored most of it and worked with me in preparing me to deliver it. As I rose from the bima to deliver it, I looked out over the packed congregation, over 400 people, and saw my dad in the front pew giving me an encouraging smile. I don't recall the entire speech. It was over 60 years ago, but the congregation was spellbound as I began, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. These are the words of the Jewish mother as she gives birth to her child. These are the last words of a dying Jew. I talked on before the rapt congregation and saw there was not a dry eye in the house. When I concluded, these were the last words of the 6 million who perished in the Nazi camps. Think of it, 6 million. That's all I can remember these many years later, but I still can feel the pride my parents felt in me that wonderful, memorable day I was bar mitzvahed. My childhood summers were pleasant and memorable, as every summer my folks rented a cottage at Tripp Lake near Mechanic Falls, Maine. The cottages were sparse. The first one had a cold water pump over the sink that we had to prime to get water. The last cottage we had was just a step above and was named Rockamako. It even had an indoor bathroom. Tripp Lake is where I spent 7 summers from the age of 5 to 12. It was at Tripp Lake that I learned to fish, swim, play ball, row a boat, and commune with nature. All the kids used to meet at Bridges Beach on the lake because that is where it was safe to swim. Bridges also had a slide and swings to play on, as well as a raft we could swim out to and use as a diving platform. Mr. Bridges had a beautiful Chris Craft mahogany speedboat, and for 50 cents each, he would take us for rides. We loved the speed and spray as he zigzagged over the waves the boat made. It was a thrilling experience for young kids. We were all a little scared that the boat would lean too far over as Mr. Bridges sharply turned and we all got wet from the spray. We loved it when it rained because after the rain we would look under the swing sets for coins that dropped out of the pockets of tourists and fell undiscovered into the sand until revealed by a hard rain. We almost always found nickels and dimes, and on a lucky day, quarters, which we immediately spent at the store at Bridges Beach or for a speedboat ride. One of the thrills of spending summers at Tripp was looking under the rocks at the shoreline for crawfish. My brother Mickey and I would wade ankle-deep in water and turn over rocks until we saw a sudden cloud of sand or a small movement which revealed our prey. We'd collect the miniature lobsters and use them for bait. The best loved them. One of the most memorable days was when Mickey and I went fishing in front of Rocamaco. We were in our rowboat about 20 yards from shore when, wham, 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 Mickey caught 3 large bass within 5 minutes using the crawfish as bait. I'm sure that day was the day my brother Mickey became an inveterate fisherman. In the late afternoon or early evening, my dad would arrive back at the lake from his daily commute to his shoe factory in Auburn. After dinner, he would take us, Mickey and I, out fishing until it was almost dark. We'd catch white perch, pickerel, yellow perch, hornpout, and smallmouth bass. Dad loved to fish. Every time he caught a bass, he'd draw an outline of it on cardboard when we returned to shore as a record of the catch. My mother was the quiet glue that kept the family functioning. She fed us, clothed us, spanked us with kind words, and let us be children in those wonderful summer months so long ago. One memorable evening, my dad brought a surprise to our little cottage. It was a puppy. We immediately named him Pal. Pal was a true mongrel hound dog, but a wonderful pet. We loved him, and he quickly became an integral part of our family. He was trained to sit and shake hands. When we moved back to Lewiston from our summer stay at the lake, he was trained to stay in the kitchen and dared not cross into the dining room. I used to crawl into his doghouse with him until I grew too big to fit. Pal was mostly black with a white tip at the end of his tail and a brown and white shading around his neck. He grew to be a good-sized dog, and we eventually had to give him away because he needed space to run and play. He had a habit of playfully jumping on people, but this was not always appreciated, and the city made us put a muzzle on him. We felt this was unfair and gave him to a farmer with plenty of space for Pal to run and romp unmuzzled. We had Pal for about 6 years before we had to give him away. One incident at Tripp Lake was the, in my mind at least, infamous baby hornpout affair. My brother and I had collected hundreds of baby hornpout just offshore and put them in a big tub of water. They were each about a half-inch long. My dad knew that they would eventually die and become quite odoriferous. We were advised that there was a game warden in the area looking for 2 boys who reportedly had illegally captured several baby hornpout. My dad, who initiated the story about the game warden, told us that there would be 5-cent fine per baby hornpout if the warden caught us. He suggested we dispose of the little guys before the warden found us. It was rumored that the warden was next door at the Brickell cottage. A word to the wise was sufficient. Mickey and I dumped the baby hornpout back into the lake. We never saw the fictitious warden, but learned in later years of my dad's plot to have us return the fish to their rightful and a natural habitat. My dad used to take Mickey and me on fishing trips into the backwoods of Maine. We went to such desolate, out-of-the-way places as Roe Pond, Carey Pond, and Lake Spednick on the Canadian border. These places were only accessible by a horse-drawn buckboard over corduroy backwoods roads. I loved sitting behind the horse and being jostled as the buckboard bumped and thumped over the ruts in the muddied and potted, barely discernible dirtway through the woods. My recollections of those trips have somewhat faded, but my love and appreciation of nature was nurtured by them. While my dad, my brother, and I, the Weiner men, were away having our fishing adventures, my mom was probably having a much-deserved rest. She and several neighbor friends from Lewiston, Auburn, who also either rented or owned cabins at Tripp Lake, played bridge or mahjong. My mother's mother, Nana Polly, and several of her sisters and brothers lived in New York City. Usually, during Christmas vacation from school, my mother, Mickey, and I would take the train from Lewiston, called the Flying Yankee, to North Station in Boston, and then rush by taxi to South Station to catch the train for NYC. It was an all-day trip and was tiring, but we loved it and enjoyed the sandwiches my mother packed and eating chicken pot pie in the train's dining car. We marveled at the skyscrapers in New York and had stiff necks from looking up at the buildings. Remember, we were two kids from a small town in Maine where the highest building we'd ever seen was the 7-story Manufacturers Bank building on Lisbon Street in Lewiston. Our cousin, Eddie Leff, whom we called Uncle Eddie because of the age differential, introduced us to the marvels of the automat, roller skating, basketball at the YMCA, the Hayden Planetarium, and many of the fabulous museums. When my dad could get time off from his work, he joined us and took us to the Statue of Liberty and to the top of the Empire State Building. It was a thrilling and educational experience every time we visited New York. We rode on the subways and went up and down on the escalators at Macy's and on the elevators at the Bancroft Hotel on 72nd Street, where Nana Polly lived. My mother's mother, Nana Polly, was an amazing woman. She was always upbeat and very accepting. She studied English constantly and insisted on speaking it and reading it instead of her native tongues, German and Russian. She encouraged independence in her grandchildren, and much to the dismay of my parents, taught Mickey and I how to ride the subway alone and which stops to get off and on. In those days, the 1940s, it was safe for children to ride the New York subway system. One summer when I was about 7 years old, I went to YMCA camp in Winthrop, Maine for 2 to 3 weeks. My brother and my cousin Mark Cohen also attended. It was a fast few weeks, but I earned my Red Cross swimming badges and enjoyed camp. At the time, when I went to bed exhausted from the day's activities, I occasionally would awake the next morning to find I had wet my bed. This was embarrassing to me, but the counselors treated me well and didn't make a big deal of it. On Sundays, all the Christian kids went to church, but Mickey, Mark, Marv Cates, and I went to Rabbi Barron's cottage nearby, where we spent Shabbat. I still remember the YMCA's camp motto, which was on a banner in the mess hall. It read, "God first, the other fellow second, I'm third." I'm sure there was a lot of work involved for both my parents in those summer days, but to me, in retrospect, those summers were idyllic. From the age of 12 on, I spent my summers at camp. Phil Lown, a wealthy shoe manufacturer and philanthropist, as well as an ardent Zionist, saw a need to have a place where all the Jewish children in Maine could spend their summers, get to meet one another, and live in a Jewish/Zionist environment. He established Camp Lown on East Pond in the Belgrade Lakes near Oakland, Maine, for this purpose. It worked. Jewish kids from all over the state went to Camp Lown. Lasting friendships were made, the camp was co-ed, and many puppy-love first romances resulted. I was enamored by a girl from Waterville named Ruthie Jacobson. My brother Mickey fell for a girl from New York named Sandy Shea. Sandy's mother was the camp nurse. Many of the campers' names and faces I still recall. Marv Karp from Milo, Dick Stearns from Skowhegan, Ruth and Estelle Jacobson, Donna Levine, Arthur Waldman, Audrey Saperstein from Waterville, Sue Mursky, Barbara Perlin, Mickey Silver, Francis Weisberg, Bert Schwartz from Portland, Marv Cates, Mark Cohen, Gil Shapiro, Marty Levine, Elaine and Timmy Goldman, Carol Plavin, Marty Plavin from Lewiston, Danny Miller from Auburn, the Ross Boys from Presque Isle, the Silver Brothers, Mark Lieberman, Bunny Lakritz from Bangor, Mert Robinson from Livermore Falls. There were many more whose names have been blurred by time, but the dream of Phil Lown was achieved. Jewish kids from all over the state met, and many became fast friends for life. Whenever a visitor came to camp, we'd all sing Avenu Shalom Aleichem, and then in a raucous, loud chorus, the camp welcoming song, which I still remember. We welcome you to our Camp Lown. We're mighty glad you're here. We'll send the air reverberating with a mighty cheer. We'll sing you in, we'll sing you out. For you, we'll raise a mighty shout. Hail, hail, the gang's all here, and you're welcome to our Camp Lown. After several years of successful operation, the camp was closed and sold to private developers. In my early years in Lewiston, I belonged to both Cub Scouts and Boy Scout troops. Our Boy Scout troop leader was Sam Hurwitz. He was a terrific guy and taught us many skills. We often day hiked to Thorns Crag and honed our scouting and fire-making skills there. Sam also took us to scout jamborees where we lived in tents and surreptitiously smoked corncob pipes with straw as tobacco. I recall getting lightheaded and somewhat ill from the experience. Our scout meetings were held at the B'nai B'rith Rooms on Lisbon Street in Lewiston. All the Jewish clubs met there before the Jewish Community Center was built. Young Judea, Phi Delta Mu fraternity, Cub and Boy Scout troops, among others, used the facility.